you imagine your histamine levels like there's a bucket and it can fill and it can empty. Well, histamine comes from a bunch of different sources. So, there's endogenous histamine, which I'm going to get into a
Mhm.
bit, but it also comes from food and there's gut bacteria and things that make it. So, your body also has these drains, something that breaks down the histamine, which would be enzymes like DAO. There's another one
Mhm.
called HNMT. And that's why measuring histamine in isolation doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story, because when histamine is elevated, the DAO enzyme, that's what breaks it down, that should be elevated as well. So if it doesn't, then that's when the histamine load exceeds the clearance capacity, and that's where the immune system stays on and activated, and you're going to be left with any number of different, inflammatory symptoms and things. Histamine, like I said, it's produced in different ways, right? So there's endogenous, which is inside the body, which would be from things like mast cells. There's other immune cells called basophils. In the gut, there's actually cells called enterochromaffin-like cells, and they produce it as well. And then there's also certain gut bacteria that do it as well. There are these histamine-producing strains like Enterococcus is one. There's Morganella. There's different ones that create it inside the body. So we've got these different areas. They're creating the histamine, and then we also take it in via dietary sources. So,
Mhm.
your fermented foods, yogurt
Yeah.
and kefir and things, aged foods, alcohol, right? Wine and beer. These things have histamine in them. And same with leftover foods, right? So, like starches, like rice and potatoes, or leftover proteins, meats, like it'll create histamine
Mhm.
load over time. So, that's why it's important to not leave leftovers too long, because it will start to increase that histamine intake as well. So it's being created in a bunch of different ways. We're taking it in and our body is making it. But then it's got control mechanisms as well. So it's meant to be cleared naturally, like I mentioned. Histamine is broken down primarily by two enzymes, right? So there's the one we mentioned there, DAO, diamine oxidase. And DAO, it really acts primarily in the gut lumen, and it breaks down dietary as well as that microbial histamine. There is a second mover here as well, being that HNMT, that's histamine and methyltransferase, and that acts inside the cells and the tissues. I focused more as a practitioner on DAO because it also reflects like mucosal barrier integrity and digestive capacity and things like that. So DAO is
Mhm.
a really important thing to consider.
Yeah, I think when we think about it clinically, DAO is one of the stronger levers that we have as clinicians, as patients, as people, because with the awareness, so we'll get into this in a little bit, but your gene that supports DAO, what that's going to determine is your capacity. So when we think about that bucket, when we think about all the places from within the body and from our food and from our environment that histamine can come in from, the gene, the DAO gene is something that's really going to speak to you. How quickly can you clear out that bucket? And with that awareness, you're able to walk into your life, to your diet, or perhaps to a clinical plan if you're to a point where you're having some histamine excess, and know how strong of a lever your diet is going to be in terms of that solution.